So, ladies and gentlemen, when you talk about excuses, when you talk about excuses for Carmelo Anthony, I mean, when you talk about excuses, you want to talk about practice. Shout out to Allen Iverson, but in all seriousness, ladies and gentlemen, Carmelo Anthony is founded guilty on first degree felony charge, minimum 25 years, got sentenced 35 years in the big boy pen. TDC. Now, what does TDC stand for, ladies and gentlemen? That stands for Texas Directional Center. And the fact that this man is getting multiple support as if he's the victim. Ladies and gentlemen, it is only one person that is alive out of this altercation. Now, for the ones that was involved in high school fights and disputes, disagreement, punishment such as being sent to a alternative school, JJ, whatever P that is, expelled for 6 months, maybe a full school year, maybe sent to ISS for 2 weeks. But at the end of the day, what is the common denominator, ladies and gentlemen? The common denominator is that you got able to see the light of day. You was alive. Austin Metcalf is no longer alive. So we're going to have to address the elephant in the room, regardless if Austin Metcalf allegedly is a racist, regardless if Austin Metcalf did provoke and push Carmelo Anthony, does not justify his life being taken away on school grounds. And that is something that is being pushed all over social media, as well as, ladies and gentlemen, in real life, that they was at school property at a track meet. It's even getting so bad, ladies and gentlemen, it's coming into the church. We got pastors bringing up Carmelo Anthony. You would think, yo, here's a lesson that needs to be told. Be very mindful of your actions, because right after action comes a consequence. Don't bring a knife to a track meet and maybe you won't serve 30 plus years in prison. Lucky you didn't get life in prison. Be mindful for what you do, because the consequences right around the corner. That's the message that needs to be taught to our youth, to others, not to act out of emotion, because if you act out of emotion, there is no logic through that emotion, and you might find yourself in a trouble. That is what needs to be taught in our community, to take heed of this message and to not be the next victim. Ladies and gentlemen, when I see situations such as this, and that's why I like to document videos, so we can learn a lesson and apply that to our personal tool belt and know what to do and what no, and know what not to do. How are we going to learn? How are we going to see examples and still make the same mistakes? This is not 1950, it's not 1940. The jig is up. It's big 2026, and boys is inserting knives into boys' heart like he's a vampire, like it's a scene from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That is cap, and he gets all this sympathy, all this remorse, all this support because of the color of his skin. Because little old Carmelo Anthony, he's a buck 130 pounds, and he was bullied by white people. Ladies and gentlemen, he was in Frisco, Texas, in a very well kept neighborhood, a very nice high school. He wasn't in the ghetto. How are you in a upscale high school bringing a knife on school premises? That makes no sense. We got to stop the cap. You got grown folks, content creators, making videos defending Carmelo Anthony. Can y'all believe that? Just when you thought you seen it all. What's even more disturbing, ladies and gentlemen, is that Carmelo Anthony is in the pulpit. Carmelo Anthony has made it into the church, manipulating the people in the church of God, where you're supposed to be saving souls, preaching the word of God, breaking it down to where they can understand. Because when you read the Bible, it can be somewhat confusing. The pastor is supposed to be the middleman, saving souls, but you giving excuses for Carmelo Anthony?
first day when they selected jury. I was there the last day when they gave closing arguments at the invitation of the family. And y'all, I sat in that courtroom disgusted because of the fact that the defense did not defend Karmelo Anthony. I sat there disgusted because the prosecuting attorney then had the nerve to paint Karmelo Anthony as a monster of a man. And then he closed out with this, and y'all reach your own conclusions. He told that jury of all non-blacks, he said, you have an opportunity here in Collin County to determine the kind of community that you want to live in. As he pointed at that little boy who suffers from seizures, what do you think he was saying to that?
Yo, that's what they're pushing. That Karmelo Anthony was suffering from seizures. That is justifying him by him having seizures, thrusting a knife inside of somebody's chest. So because he had a cold and, he had a headache and, he was hungry, that justifies the death of Austin Metcalf. The excuses are insane. Every little frog hair, they're trying to make and blow it out of proportion. He was having seizures. That's why he was stemming. That's why he was spazzing out, tweaking. If it was one of your own, would the excuse still be there? Absolutely. You send your kid expecting to see your kid again. You don't want to hear the news that your kid is no longer living on this green planet because somebody has a knife on the premises of school property. The school also should be held accountable. But I mean, they're in a very upscale neighborhood, so how are they going to know? They're going to give the kids the benefit of the doubt that they have enough common sense not to have a knife on school premises. And that is the common denominator, because remove the knife, ladies and gentlemen, we wouldn't even know of these two gentlemen names unless they made it to the NFL or whatever profession of their choice. But unfortunately, we know the names of Austin Metcalf because he's no longer living with us. And we know the name of Karmelo Anthony not because he's in tabloids or in the headlines of ESPN. Now we know Karmelo Anthony's name because he wants to decide to bring a weapon to school. And you have people saying he has the right to defend himself. How does he have the right to bring a knife to school? People really confusing these two situations. Of course, you have the right in the state of Texas to carry a 3.5 pocket knife. Of course, in matter of fact, in the state of Texas, you have the right to carry without even the gun being registered underneath your name. You can have a whole 9mm in Texas without it being registered. Excuse me. Hold on now. Hold on. It needs to be registered, but you don't need to have a license. Hold on now. Hold on. I had to think about that one. Hold on. Let me retract that statement. In the state of Texas, you don't need to have a license, but it definitely needs to be registered. Hold on now. But you can carry a 3.5 pocket knife in public, but within the school system, an educational on school property. And what is school property? Not just the school itself, also the track field, the football field, the soccer field, anything that the school is associated with is school property. So you mean to tell me that Karmelo Anthony brought a knife on school property? Ladies and gentlemen, when I was going to track meets and football events, only thing I worried about was money in my pocket so I can buy food after I'm done doing what I'm doing. How you bringing a knife on school property? That alone is a felony. Not only is Karmelo Anthony an endangerment to himself, but he's endangerment to everyone around him. Then he wants to decide to pull it out, no pun intended, and thrust a knife inside somebody's chest like he's a vampire. He could have easily attacked his arm. He could have attacked his face. He could have even played possum and portrayed like he was going to do something, but in reality, not actually commit the action that you're trying to do. Like, who does that? Just because of emotion, just because of what again? Because he's schizophrenic, or I mean, what's the excuse that the pastor is giving? This man Frederick Haynes that he suffers from seizures. So if he suffers from from that condition, that doesn't have the reaction to thrust a knife and spaz somebody in the heart. What kind of justification is that? So now you're trying to what plead insanity? You trying to plead a medical condition made him thrust take a life away? That is BS. And what's sad is that this is a pastor, a man of God. Now, to judge the next man, you got to point towards your own direction, but we also got to keep it a spade. In the church of God, your job is to dissect the Bible and save souls. But he's bringing politics into the church as if the church don't have their opinion on their own, but you're forcing the church into a certain narrative that Carmelo Anthony is the victim. What is the common ground in the church, people, to talk about God? What does Carmelo Anthony have to do with that? But it's being taught in the church house.
At all non-black jury, and you're going to talk about you're going to talk about
Then another narrative lie that has to be debunked, talking about there wasn't a black jury member in the jury. Whoa, let's debunk that lie. Because you see how he just wants to skip past that and throw the narrative that there wasn't a black jury among the... Stop the cap. First of all, Pastor Frederick Haynes, the gentleman capping, they interviewed the black jury members and they said they don't have the heart to convict one of their own. So why would you put somebody so emotional in the jury if they don't have the conviction to give a straight answer, non-biased conviction? They interviewed the black juries before the case occurred, and they asked them a severe amount of questions, a huge, not a huge, but they gave them a serious amount of questions, excuse me. And the black jurors' respond was, we can't convict one of our own. So we got to do our research because we listen to narratives and we just run with it and believe it. They say this and people believe it and they don't do the research to back it up. It's one thing we don't have technology and cell phones in our hands and computers, but now in the big 2026, the resources in our accessibility at an all-time high. What a time to be alive. No soy dominicano, pero ya tú sabes. So if we have the ability to back up, to research whatever we're hearing, we got to do that. Talking about, oh, there wasn't a black jury. It was an unfair trial. Ladies and gentlemen, Carmelo Anthony is lucky to even get 35 years. He's lucky he didn't get life. Oh man, how come other people got a lesser sentence and did the same thing with a lighter skin complexion? All the excuses in the book. So I believe this is selective outrage because how come everyone is making content of Carmelo Anthony, but they don't talk about the other crimes that the black community does? Let's call it out. And I'm not over here justifying anything, but why is this such a big deal? There's been plenty of crime to talk about, but this gets the most attention. Why is that, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, it's even making waves into the church. Where's this energy, Pastor Frederick Haynes? Where's this energy for the other crimes? What about that man that stabbed the girl from the back when he was on a train? I had to take that video off of YouTube. It was crazy. Covering that, I forgot his name. I think it occurred last year, but doing my homework on that entity, I can't even call him a gentleman, on that entity, he had so many prior charges. I think he had at least 9 to 13 prior charges, and the judicial system failed that poor lady because they still gave him rights to walk the streets of the public. When she got off of work, that man was tweaking behind her and took her life away. Where was the videos about that? No defense for him, huh? Once again, how is it legal to have a knife on school property? Then you want to add context into the situation. Carmelo Anthony wasn't in the hood. He wasn't in the ghetto to where you have to defend yourself at all times. Then he could persuade to the courtroom, I'm living in a very treacherous, a very dangerous neighborhood. I have to carry that. then you can somewhat get some type of sympathy, get manslaughter. There was no excuse for that. What was the worst? So for him committing that action, what was the worst that was going to happen? He was going to get bullied, right? Maybe punched in the face. Worst case scenario, go home with a black guy, maybe even end up in the hospital. Let's even go as far as what's the worst that would happen if Carmelo Anthony didn't have the knife and he was allegedly getting jumped. He will be in ICU intensive care, but his life would still be here. His life was not on the line on school property. Stop the cap. His life was on the line at a track meet that he had to pull out a whole pocket knife. Stop the cap. And what's scary work is that you have grown folks making videos defending Carmelo Anthony as if he wasn't on school property. At a track meet, now what are you doing at a track meet? You going to the concession stands, you talking to your friends, your family may show up after work. It's a safe environment. The only time the police is called if a fight breaks out and they remove you from the premises, or if you're not supposed to be there and you get caught up by law officials or maybe a member of facility of the school and they catch you and they move you around. But what life is on jeopardy when you're at a track meet? That is the last thing on your mind when you're at a school event, is that your life is on the line. Carmelo Anthony, what is your excuse? Let me read the chat because I'm confused. We're living in the matrix, ladies and gentlemen. People are defending somebody when he's the one that committed the action. They're making it seem like Carmelo Anthony is the victim, but he's the one that did the action. I mean, damn. I can barely sneeze outside without being judged. I can barely speed 5 miles above the limit without the police. You know what I'm saying? You always got to look out for laws. Y'all know y'all don't follow the speed limit. You know that feeling. And if you get pulled over, it's nobody's fault but yours because you're the one who decided to speed. So if you have a self accountability, you get pulled over because you're speeding. Nobody want to hear the excuses. Only by the grace of the police officer to give you a pass, a warning, and it's only by his discretion. He doesn't have to give you a warning if you caught speeding. But at the end of the day, self accountability. Follow the speed limit, get pulled over. What's the problem? You were speeding. If you know damn well you wasn't speeding, then you got a case. But if you are going 5-10 miles over, it is what it is. But Carmelo Anthony, he gets all the excuses underneath the sun. Now we got to keep it a spade. If evidence comes out that Carmelo Anthony is innocent, then I will apologize publicly. I am wrong. I keep it fair. I'm not here to bash the man if he's innocent, but the evidence that has been displayed, everything that has been. Also, another lie, ladies and gentlemen, they want to talk about the knife that was used was a cleat sharpener. First of all, I never even heard the term cleat sharpener until the case. This is a whole weapon, extremely sharp. The lie after lie after lie after lie, saying the weapon that was used was a cleat sharpener. No, it was a pocket knife. So what I'm trying to understand is that why is there so many lies being told to defend Carmelo Anthony? It's as if this is a glitch in the matrix. The evidence is obviously being displayed. You can show them footage, and now videos are being made from certain content creators saying that the video has now been edited and has been altered. Show the real footage. So you show them the knife being used as fake. You show them the footage of Carmelo Anthony running like a coward, talking about, I told him not to put his hands on me. I told him not to put his hands on me. You play that footage and everything is AI and fake. Ladies and gentlemen, the people glorifying the death of Austin Metcalf is exposing the demons within themselves. To be happy that somebody else is no longer living with us is nasty work. And if you see people in real life like that glorifying a death of somebody because of the color of their skin, even for political views or any reason, depart yourself from that person because that is not somebody that you need to be around or talk to, listen to. Glorifying a death because of a disagreement, regardless, once again, if they was beefing, racial slurs was being thrown in the direction of Carmelo Anthony, does not justify death. Are y'all serious? People in the comment section talking about you will never get your son again. What? Nasty word.
Escalation. You're going to talk about telling our kids to calm down. No, you tell the kids to calm down. Who I went out to that Collin County courthouse and they came up to me. They said, "Thank you for being here, Pastor. But my question to you is, we can't defend ourselves because George Zimmerman can hunt down Trayvon."
Oh my God. Another gaslight from the community, bruh. I thought we was better than this. Why are they mixing other cases with this case? George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin has nothing to do with Carmelo Anthony. One actually committed the action. One was racial. One was just trying to mind their business. Trayvon Martin was trying to get his Skittles and whatever he's trying to get his Kool-Aid. He was minding his business and got stalked by some weirdo. Carmelo Anthony was invited to the school tent, which was a rival school. First of all, why even going to a rival school in the first place? He went to the opposition. Then the man was suspended. So you're suspended. You went to the opposition school. The team captain, Austin Metcalf, approaches Carmelo Anthony 8 minutes later, tells Carmelo Anthony to move around, puts his hands on Carmelo Anthony. And do you know what the justification for putting his hands on Carmelo Anthony? People are saying, well, he should have never put his hands on Carmelo Anthony. He effed around and found out, effed around and find out and see what happens. He should have never put his hands on him in the first place. So putting your hands on somebody on school property gives justification for a knife being thrown in your direction? That's the logic that's being displayed all over the web. Justification for a knife on school property. They're making it seem like Carmelo Anthony was in New York City, somewhere in the bar, back alley, back up against the wall, no cameras, nobody could hear him scream, as if the coaches and plenty of adults and students wasn't around him. He was an open field track meet on the bleachers. He had enough common sense to run after. How come he didn't run before? Because he wanted to prove his point. Because he has something to prove. First of all, once again, we got to go to the premeditation. People say, why did he get the charge of 30 plus years for a first time offender? Well, the charge is premeditation. Why did he have the knife in the first place? How you going to defend somebody that's bringing a knife? Like, why did you bring it in the first place? It makes no sense.
Martin, and he can get off for stand your ground. But this boy, our friend, can't even defend himself. We are not safe.
The pastor, Frederick Haynes, is pushing out fear in the church, talking about we are not safe. Imagine that. Instead, the man should be preaching there should be consequences for our actions. And even though it's a very unfortunate situation, we have to be accountable and take this one on the chin. One of ours make a very boneheaded decision by bringing a knife. That's like bringing a weapon to work. You are endangerment to everybody in the workplace. Let your coworker have that. Man, that boy needs to be terminated ASAP. Suspended, terminated. But we're downplaying the situation when he brings a knife to school property. What makes work in school different? As a matter of fact, school should be 10 times work. That's a location where you should be safe at the most. If there's a hurricane, you run to the school be giving out food, and sometimes in the neighborhood, the school should be a shelter, not a place where your child is no longer living. That is some nasty work. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here I'm going to play a video because the outrage for Carmelo Anthony is just insane. Of course, you can have a difference of opinion, but this one beats the cake.
When you would come here and you look like us to slaughter you. Absolutely. That judge intentionally sealed us from being able to have a legal right to see what the on in this case for a month reason. That's fine. Because he.
Now, she's not lying. I don't understand, ladies and gentlemen, why in the Carmelo Anthony case did the jury, not the jury, but the courtroom, they did not allow any black media to bring any type of recording devices, any computers, and they could not take notes. I'm finding that out as of late. That is very alarming and suspect. Why did the courtroom not allow any black media to not take notes, bring their computers, or record? That doesn't make sense. But the mass media of lighter skin complexion, they was able to record and do what they wanted to do. Now that's something I'm gonna have to keep a spade. The black jurors, they interviewed the black jurors and they said verbatim they don't have the heart to convict one of their own. So that's already debunked. But this one here is very suspect. We're gonna have to keep it a stack. How come the black media couldn't record? They couldn't take notes? They couldn't bring their computer?
Now when we have access, we don't play about our people. So how do he silence us? He closed the case so we can't see what is going on. Also, the reason he shut down black media from coming, he only had these white in their courthouse so that they could tell the wrong story about Carmelo Anthony. And they could tell the white story about the domestic terror, because that's what they were. Those twins are domestic racist terrorists. That judge, him. That prosecutor, him. They had them white on that jury for a reason. Get it back in the when they pick their jury like that, that's designed because they know that their people are not smart as us. We can read through the book. They follow their book and believe what they say. So when we are out here discrediting ourselves, it's giving them an advantage. They know how to divide us, and that's through the court system. And they silence us from the court system. When you see that prosecutor, ask him, why do he have a settlement with a civil case for harassing 7 white women at the... Ask the DA how he was on that. He still got a job. That's because they vote for each other. So we got to take our power back. Elections are coming. That's right. That's right. We gonna tell they ass what we want. Are you? We got to show up for jury service. We got to show up and participate. Stop trying, because that's how they slaughter us. Those kids got up there and lied off of a relationship, and the prosecutors led it. They have an ethical duty to make sure witnesses testify truthfully, and they did, because it was a win for them. They cost one of ours their freedom. That judge was in there feeding the state objections because they were too dumb to know what the object to. Yes, he did. I ain't never seen no judge do no shit like that.
Yo, ladies and gentlemen, can y'all believe this? The passion and the energy and the emotion for somebody that is guilty is insane. And hard reality. The appeals don't really happen like that. I know people talking about Carmelo Anthony just got a new team of lawyers, a very prestigious team from South Down in Texas, very elite crew. But once again, the appeal doesn't really happen. It's not very common. They're gonna have their T's crossed and their I's dotted. Everything's gonna have to be transparent. And I just don't see it being overturned. The only way that it could be overturned is that one, the knife was never in Carmelo Anthony's possession. Two, they're gonna have the brother of Austin Metcalf testify. How come he didn't testify? These are valid questions. Was he gonna fold under pressure under the stand? Was Austin Metcalf brother? If this was a lie, 'cause let's play devil's advocate, because one thing for sure, a life has been taken. One thing we don't know is that what really happened, because they're saying the footage is so blurry. But if the footage is so blurry, how come multiple witnesses didn't tell the truth? So they're saying that it's a racial thing. I don't think it's a racial thing, because who had the possession of the knife in the first place? Carmelo Anthony. DNA of the knife, footage of the situation, but yet there's still confusion. One thing we're not confused about, ladies and gentlemen, is that the courtroom denied the black media to record, to bring computers, and to take notes. I haven't heard of something like that since Jim Crow laws. So that is something fishy about that for sure.
He got too much experience, over 40 years at the and you don't know that, and you got this judge up there helping you. Such a big case. This is his life. We just came from South Carolina where they hunted that baby down and got off to slaughter you. Absolutely. That judge intentionally sealed us from being able to have a legal right to see what the on in this case for a reason. That's right. Because he know when we have access, we don't play about our people. So how do he silence us? He closed the case so we can't see what is going on. Also, the reason he shut down black media from coming, he only had these white.
I'm gonna go to the polls real quickly. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know your take also on the case. Do you believe that Carmelo Anthony is guilty, which he is already convicted, or do you believe that he was done unfair and he's actually innocent? Now he is currently in TDC federal prison, wearing a buck 130 pounds. May God bless his soul, because he's down there in Texas Directional Center Federal Prison. And I don't know if he's in general public. I hope he's not, because if he's innocent, we got 182 votes in the building. 84% says no. Carmelo Anthony using a knife at school is not self-defense, but 16% votes yes. Carmelo Anthony using a knife at school is self-defense. Yo, ladies and gentlemen, is that 16% that you gotta watch out for? People, this should be 100% to zero, but you got a select few, not a lot, but you got 16% out of 185 votes talking about it's okay to bring a knife to school. Where is it legal to bring a knife to school?
That courthouse, so that they can tell the wrong story about Carmelo Anthony, and they can tell the white story about the domestic terror, because that's what they were. Those twins are domestic racist terrorists.
Let's go with her narrative. Even if the twins, Austin Metcalf and his brother, even if the whole school was racist and evil and, very mean to Carmelo Anthony, and also what I take from the situation, just a little side note, for the parents that got bred and they move out into a upscale neighborhood, you're going to see less of your people. So you're able to hold your own, but when you reproduce and make kids, now these kids are growing up in a predominant white, maybe Indian, Asian neighborhood. They're going to see less of their people more than ever if you're in a nice neighborhood. So that's one thing that we never think about, as people coming out of the trenches is that, of course, you want to get money, you get the house, you get the materialistic milestones and goals. But when you put a kid into that situation, that kid now is outnumbered in terms of skin color because you're no longer seeing the at least 1 out of 10 black kids. Now it's like 1 out of 1,000 if you're in a very nice, prestigious, upscale neighborhood. That comes with the territory of the minority being outnumbered by who knows how much. So I'm pretty sure Carmelo Anthony, maybe he was getting bullied for him to have a, because I'm trying to justify why was there a knife in his possession in the first place? That doesn't even make sense. Could you imagine how fearful you have to be? Because he can't be that dumb. He's a straight A student. He's a straight A student. They said he was some type of star athlete. I never heard of his name. They actually used to talk about high school athletes all over on social media, but I never heard his name. But I digress. So why would he have a knife in the first place? Maybe they was, you know, giving him death threats and he was scared for his life. He's like, "Yeah, I ain't gonna take me out, so I'm gonna have a knife in my person now." That's the only thing that can justify, which still doesn't make it right, why Carmelo Anthony had a knife in the first place. Maybe they was sending him death threats for months, if not years. Maybe while he was growing up in these white neighborhoods, he was being bullied, scared for his life. There needs to be a 30 for 30 with Barbara Walters breaking down the psyche of Carmelo Anthony. Why did you bring the knife to school? If he comes out and say, "You know what, for years they've been chasing me down their bikes and hanging me by my underwear and doing all types of things," then I could understand why he did it. But once again, how come the brother didn't get on the stand of Jet Metcalf? Excuse me, of Austin Metcalf. How come the brother didn't pull up? Was he gonna fold on the stand because they was lying? How is the own blood of the brother not going to testify? Please let me know in the chat. That is a valid question. I need to know. All these questions are not going to get the life of Austin Metcalf back, unfortunately. Look at what took Austin Metcalf's life away, and it's the knife. Who had the knife? Who had the knife in their hand? Now, Lucky says you can't even define a sundown town. I don't know who you're referring to. If you're referring to me, ladies and gentlemen, and for the ones that don't know what a sundown town is, that is not a place where you want to be if you are a minority, for sure. But let's see, if you're referring to a sundown town, if I can highlight that comment, if you're referring to a sundown town, you don't need a knife on school property if you're in a sundown town. Outside of school, absolutely. Even in your neighborhood, you can have, it's legal in Texas to have a pocket knife. But on school property, you cannot have a knife. You cannot.
That judge, him. That prosecutor, him. They had them white on their jury for a reason.
You gonna get it back in the court?
When they pick their jury like that, that's designed because they know that their people are not smart as us. We can read through the book. They follow their book and believe what they say. So when we are out here discrediting ourselves, it's giving them an advantage. They know how to divide us, and that's through the court system. And they silence us from the court system. When you see that prosecutor, ask him, why do he have a settlement with a civil case for harassing 7 white women at the... Ask the DA how he was on that.
So that's a goalpost move. Whatever is going on in the courtroom has nothing to do with Carmelo Anthony. What has everything to do with Carmelo Anthony is this man wants to bring a knife on school property. Now, what I don't agree with Once again, why did the courtroom deny the black media? How come they was not allowed to take notes? How come the black media was not allowed to bring their computers or record their proceedings? That doesn't even make any sense. If there's any tampering of evidence, the case is automatically going to be appealed and that's going to be overturned. That's what the black lawyers need to do. They need to find some type of wrongful act that was done and overturn the case. But so far, ladies and gentlemen, it's looking sticky for Carmelo Anthony. A life is no longer here because a man was using his emotion instead of logic. He had enough intellect to run to the coach after he took the life of Austin Metcalf. How come you didn't do that prior? Talking about he put his hands on me. I told him not to put his hands on me. We gotta play that.
Okay. He put his hands on me. I told him not to. He put his hands on me. And this suspect. Okay. He put his hands on me. I told him not to. He put his hands on me. Suspect. Suspect. Okay. He put his hands on me. I told him not to. He put his hands on me. And this photo of the Ozark Trail.
And I posted what I posted, and the amount of energy I'm getting from people, and it's a lot of black people calling Carmelo Anthony a murderer, and he got what he deserved, and why are you saying he deserves a fair trial? A murderer, a murderer, a murderer, a murderer.
Yes, he is a murderer. He took somebody's life away. Why is that a hard pill to swallow that he didn't take somebody's life away? Like, are we just skipping through that?
thing is this. If that's the energy you got about any of this, then you should have that same energy for that young man who was shot in the back by that gas station owner.
The gas station and school property is two different places. At a gas station, unfortunately, you know what comes with that job. You know, you got all type of random people coming in your facility, your place of occupation. You can't really, put your finger on the politics because you're at a gas station. At a school, that is the last place you're going to think that your life is going to be on the line, is at a track meet. You got to stop the cap. Y'all see the delusion?
Same energy. And I don't.
The same energy. So you send your beloved child to school, not every day is going to be a good day. We try our best to raise our kids to be a functional member of society. Sometimes they bump their heads just as much as you bumped your head. Sometimes you get into a feud with those around you, even those at work. Sometimes the only thing that stops you from going off at your coworkers is self-control. But at very adolescent age, in high school, middle school, sometimes you base emotion on sometimes you base action on emotion. And Austin Metcalf, team captain at the time, approaches Carmelo Anthony that was suspended, which was the ops, the rival, a rival member was at Austin Metcalf's school, put his hands on him. Now, Austin Metcalf put his hands on Carmelo Anthony? Absolutely not. You shouldn't put your hands on nobody, but on school property, boys gonna be boys. Can we keep it a stack? Boys are gonna be boys. Austin Metcalf decides to put his hands on Carmelo Anthony, and that gives justification to do what?
I feel like going back and forth with people in my comments about this shit because I'm not gonna do that. I'm just not, and it's bothering me. I'm literally was just in like sitting in a Bible class, and I'm trying to focus.
Yo, it's bothering people so bad that Carmelo Anthony is in jail. Where's this energy for Austin Metcalf? They're happy. They're glorifying the death of Austin Metcalf. They're even attacking the father, as if the father didn't lose a boy. They're saying like, if you raised your boy right, he would still be alive. They're sending hate towards the father of Austin Metcalf.
But I'm so annoyed by that. And I already explained that I'm not like going back and forth with nobody in these comments. This is sick to me. I can't understand how y'all keep.
So it's sick because of selective outrage. We got to go by case basis. What happened to George Floyd is at the same situation of Carmelo Anthony. And that's what, as a people, we are doing. Just because somebody's black, we're mixing in the politics of the actual context of what happened. The man decided to bring a knife on school property that has nothing to do with the past situations such as George Floyd, George Zimmerman, and all other past unfortunate situations. We got to stop the cap.
Calling this young man a murderer, right? And he.
No, we're not calling him a murderer. He actually took somebody's life away. He doesn't have the innocent plea, what if? No, Austin Metcalf is not in ICU. He's not potentially going to come back. He's not in critical condition. He was disposed. He was deceased at the crime scene. He didn't have time to say bye to his brother. Austin Metcalf didn't have time to say bye to his family and friends. He didn't know that day that he was no longer going to be breathing. But people say, well, why did he put his hands on him? Why did Carmelo Anthony pull out a knife? You don't think somebody's gonna pull out a knife on school property? Like, this is not freaking the ghetto. You're not in Third Ward, Fifth Ward, First Ward. You're not in Crenshaw, Los Angeles. You're not in the back alley in Brooklyn, New York, Queens, New York. you was in Frisco, Texas, in a predominant white neighborhood, and you probably did get bullied. That's why you had a knife in the first place. Imagine how much of a weak-minded individual brings a knife on school property. It just goes to show the mental of this, because you can, ladies and gentlemen, Carmelo Anthony was a straight A student, but with that being said, he still brought a knife to school. It just goes to show that there's a difference of school smart and street smart. If he wanted to really do something, he could have did it off of school property, but he got approached, right? He could have took that, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, okay, bet. Y'all want to press me? Y'all want to jump me? All right, let me catch you outside of school property. But he wants to base his emotion. He wants to act on emotion on school property, and we're supposed to have sympathy for him, as if he's not a senior in high school. It's not like he's in elementary, middle school, because people make bad choices, but at least they're still young. So you give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe send them to juvenile, and maybe they'll turn their life around when they get older. No, this is a grown ass man. Then the excuse, ladies and gentlemen, is that he was charged as an adult. So Texas was unfair. Well, in the state of Texas, you're charged as an adult at the age of 17, and he was 17. Is that very young? Absolutely. But it's just luck of the draw. Maybe if he was 16, he could get some type of grace, but he's a grown ass man in the state of Texas.
Was sitting there minding his business, and they marched over there to bully him, right?
They wasn't marching, they was walking. And if they was bullying him, that does not give justification to pull out a knife on school property. We're gonna have to keep saying that because people don't understand. You can't have a knife on school property.
They bullied him. Because the dude, if you know the background of those twins, they were bullies. Full blown, old school.
Bullies does not justify you dying on school property. Did the bully pull out a weapon? If he did, then Carmelo Anthony would absolutely have the right to defend himself. And even then, he still would be questioned, why did you have a knife? He could have said, I've been bullied for months. They've been threatening my life, sending me texts, sending me hate mail. I felt like my life was in jeopardy. So I had a knife in my personnel to defend myself because they was always threatening my life. So that's why I had it. Obviously, you see, Austin Metcalf, he pulled out a weapon. He was trying to take my life away. That's why I pulled out a knife in the first place. And he would have the grace of the courtroom and the judicial system. But that wasn't that case. Nobody had an opposing weapon. There's only one person that had a weapon, and he's living.
Biff from Back to the Future, bullies. Full bullies. And then they jumped him after he warned them. Look, I don't care what nobody say. I'm from the west side of Chicago. If I'm about to get into with somebody and they like, fam, run up on me if you want to, or I'm going to stab you. If that's the case, most likely, just from street smarts, I'm not doing that. I got shit to lose. If somebody telling me, man, like I'm into it with somebody and they're like, man, Rail, run up on me if you want to. Click, clack. I'm going to pop you if you run up on me. Then I make a decision.
You see how these grown folks are talking? That's not the same situation. Carmelo Anthony was at school property. You're not in general public. If Carmelo Anthony was in the general public, obviously he has the right to defend himself. If somebody touches you, nobody should touch you at any time, at any moment in general public. They definitely shouldn't touch you at school, but on school property, you can't have a knife. Why is that so hard to understand, ladies and gentlemen?
Got to have vision.
They justifying a knife on school property.
Decision at that point. And then, Texas got all these crazy laws when it comes to stand your ground and self-defense. That's exactly what that was. The biggest argument any of us have right now.
That was not self-defense. That was murder. The cap is crazy.
It's not even about like that he don't deserve to be punished for his reaction. Because we're not saying his reaction was correct either. But I'm saying that young man don't deserve 35 years, who was a stand-up student, who never got in trouble before, who's never been arrested, and he was scared. I'm not gonna argue with y'all ignorant ass niggas like that. That's crazy to me. When you defend that, and you literally, it is a young man who got chased down, and his killer got off with self-defense.
Y'all see how they mixed other cases with Carmelo Anthony case. George Zimmerman, Carmelo Anthony, George Floyd has nothing to do with Carmelo Anthony, bro. Just because the man is black doesn't mean he's a victim. We have to hold our own accountable. If you decide to speed and you get pulled over, nobody told your ass to speed. If you decide to do whatever you do, you're the only one that is going to suffer the consequences. But the people wants to give him a pacifier and a bib and give him sympathy, talking about he was having seizures. What does a seizure have to do with doing the act that Carmelo Anthony did? They're throwing his medical condition as if that is some type of importance to do with anything with the case. Sick. Meanwhile, people really are having that type of issue. That is a mockery of that. Just to what? To get sympathy? The man got 30 plus years in TDC federal prison for taking a life away, and he gets sympathy because he's black, right? The only thing I don't like about this case is that I don't understand why the courtroom didn't allow black media to record, take notes, or bring computers into the proceedings. That doesn't make any sense. Besides that, the evidence has been displayed. Unless other evidence comes out, we gotta be honest, ladies and gentlemen. Put your bias to the side because he's a black man. We gotta stop that. We gotta stop the cap. Look at him as a human being. I don't care how much you hate white people. I don't care how much of injustice they done to black people in the past. We know the history. We know what they did. Let's just look at a life for a life. The man is at high school. He's at a track meet high school event, school property. How do you have the right to defend yourself with a knife on school property? Just justification because he's a racist, because Austin Metcalf was a bully. That gives just justification. The immaturity is at an all-time high. And if this is the logic from grown folks in our world, and ladies and gentlemen, then maybe we need to be more wary of our surroundings, because you would give the benefit of the doubt just because they're adults, they have common sense, but it's looking like a lot of people don't have common sense. I'm not judging the case off skin color. I'm judging the case on the evidence, and the evidence is a knife was used. Who used the knife? And why was a knife there in the first place? That's all I need. Those are my only questions.
I ain't never seen nobody do some self-defense shit, chasing somebody down and shooting them in the back.
So once again, other past cases that was about race has nothing to do with Carmelo Anthony. Now, was it racist for them denying the black media not to record and take notes and bring the computers into the courtroom? That is for sure racist. That doesn't even make sense.
Trayvon Martin, come on, y'all. Y'all got all this weird energy about this shit, and you ain't saying nothing about none of these other cases. Get the fuck out of here. And then people love to bring up black on black crime, and man, look at it's a much deeper conversation that obviously a lot of you crazy people without common sense, it's not mature enough, intelligent enough to have a conversation with about it. Stay the fuck off my page if you come with that energy. You weak as hell. If you feel
You see how emotional people get over this case when the man took somebody's life away. They feeling some type of way. Carmelo Anthony got 30 plus years. Downplaying that somebody is no longer breathing, no longer here with us.
like that, say whatever you want on your page. Straight up. And I mean that. You know, cool. I'm a stand-up comic. I'm an actor. I'm a writer. I'm a director. I'm an entertainer. 100%. I love entertaining people. That is what I do. I'm going to continue to do that. As much as I post about this, I'm going to post-promote my movie, and I'm going to do all that stuff. But at the same time, that don't mean I don't stand for something. Somebody had the nerve to say, well, okay, so what if that was your son that was killed? If my kid was bullying somebody, my child was a bully, full blown, It would break my heart to know they got killed for something like this. But at the same time, on some real shit, I will have to own who the fuck my kid is.
That is a lie. If your kid was a bully and was provoking a fight, because that's what they're saying that Osman Metcalf was doing, and in return, he died on school property, you would you wouldn't have any pushback towards the school, towards law officials, towards a person that committed the action when your kid didn't have a weapon. Now, if your kid had a weapon and he was disposed, deleted, then he got what he was asking for. Now, if your kid received only a punch or even was being sent to the hospital, and I'm referring to Osman Metcalf, and you witness your kid with a black eye, then yeah, he got, he put himself in that situation. But no, the response cannot be my kid is on school property, he didn't have a weapon, and the opposing member had a weapon on school property and took my kid's life away. No, that is wrong. I understand Osman Metcalf may have been wrong, even though I don't think he was wrong. But I could see the point to where they're saying he should have never put his hands on Carmelo Anthony. I could, yeah, you should not put your hands on somebody, but you all that the response can be justification with a knife thrusting inside somebody's heart. That doesn't even make sense.
If I'm raising a bully, and most likely motherfuckers that move like that is coming from that type of environment. Point blank, period. And you saw when that father did his live, how he really fucking felt, where the fuck they got that type of shit from.
What's crazy, they're mad at the father being passionate when he lost his son. How are you mad at a father when he no longer has the child that he brought into this world? Now they're saying, well, if he was a good father, maybe his child will still be alive. The insensitivity is at an all-time high, and the immaturity, the trolling, like, you would think we would be better as a people, and it's coming from our own people, exposing the demons within themselves, glorifying death. They did the same thing to Charlie Kirk. Of course, he had a very controversial takes, but regardless of how you feel about the man, that doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve to live. Ladies and gentlemen, when you see people that have this type of psyche and mindset, take note and move accordingly ASAP.
It is right there, and I can't believe you people are arguing that. You mean to tell me you think that young man with no record, none of that shit, in a self-defense case deserved 35 years? And Trayvon Martin's killers off. That young man who took a fucking AR-15 to a march, murdered people, and do with the crime face.
Paul Smith, you said he already told him, don't put your hands on me. So that means not only is it premeditated, because why did you say that before you put out a knife, but also how does that give justification to pull out a knife? Like, Paul Smith, please let me know in the chat. If somebody put your hands on you, if you went to high school, would you pull out a knife and do what Carmelo Anthony did? Or would you respond by using your fist, by maybe telling a authority figure, maybe, running to a friend, anything else? But would you pull out a knife on school property? Now, what is school property? Let's go into context. Where did this event take place? It was at open field at a track meet, and they was at bleachers. Bleachers is very open, you're not secluded somewhere in a back corner. His back wasn't up against the wall. It's not like he was in the restroom. There wasn't cameras. They couldn't hear him scream if he needed help. There was multiple adults, multiple coaches. He wasn't stuck somewhere. How does that give reason to pull out a knife it's it's very unfortunate, but it's comical as well. Just the logic of his stock price is to pull out. He went 0 to 1,000 F 100. This man thought he was Zorro. This man thought he was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Did he think that Austin Metcalf was a vampire? Why you pulling out a knife, my guy? Are you about to turn to Chef Ramsay? You about to cut some tomatoes? Like, that's the questions that should have been asked when Austin Metcalf put out a knife. Yo, bro, what you about to do with that, bro? You about to cut some onions? You about to, you know what I'm saying? Open an avocado? You about to cut some cucumbers? What are you about to do with that pocket knife? Because I know you ain't about to do what I think you're about to do. Did you pull out a knife because you're trying to get the bottom wick of a candle? You don't got a screwdriver, so you're improvising for a knife. And what's crazy work, ladies and gentlemen, is that they said the knife that was used wasn't a knife. The weapon of choice, they said that it was a cleat sharpener. Like, the excuses are crazy.
Got the fuck off for murder. He wasn't even charged with manslaughter.
Was there more than one that self-defense? The Ohio player. Are we denying self-defense? Absolutely. I'm not denying self-defense. What I'm confused and baffled about is that why are you pulling out a knife on school property? That is the common denominator that a lot of people are missing. They talking about self-defense. You have the right to defend yourself, this, that, and the third. Let's talk about the location and the weapon. The location is at a track meet on school property. The weapon is a knife. Why is a knife on school property? And why was it used? He got the minimum. They was trying to give the man life in prison. He's lucky he's able to see the light of day. And you know what? When Karmelo Anthony does come out of prison, if he survives prison, God bless his soul. But nobody told him to take a life away. If he does come out of prison, he can be a testimony to not act based on emotion. He can be a spokesperson of his situation, and he can capitalize. Everybody knows his name. He can sell books. They're going to interview Karmelo Anthony. How was life in prison? Hopefully his Caesar salad doesn't get tossed with extra dressing and croutons and Parmesan cheese up in there. Hopefully he's not lactose intolerant, because Wayne, barely 130 pounds, with felons such as arsonists and all type of weirdos up in there. Now, he may get favor with the black community, but there's a lot of racial white people in Texas Directional Center, TDC federal prison down south in Texas. $130, may God bless his soul. But can we have sympathy for the man when nobody told him to bring a knife? Now, my only justification, which still is not justification, is that maybe he was scared for his life because he knew they was out to get him. His family had bread. They stayed in a very nice neighborhood. He probably was outnumbered in terms of being the only black boy in class for most of his classes. And they probably hated his ass. He was good. Not only is he black, but he's good. Put that combination together. You put a black person and he's good at what he's doing in terms of he's making straight A's, stealing your girl, right? Stealing your girl. And he got bread. He's smart. He's talented. He's a threat. And that's something that needs to be talked about, because as a grown adult, when you're doing well, you can hold your own. But what about your baby boy and your baby girl that's being raised in these neighborhoods? That needs to be a documentary about growing up successful in white neighborhoods. That's scary, bro. Because you give the benefit of the doubt that all white people are not racist. No, let's not call it ignorant. I'm not defending Karmelo Anthony as if he didn't just commit murder, but for him to even have a knife in the first place, he was scared for his life, because it's not like he was bringing a knife to do something like cut wood or cut meat or go fishing. No, he used it as self-defense because he knew they was going to press him eventually one of these days. Why else would you have it on your personnel? The man was getting bullied prior to the event that took place. That wasn't the first time he got into an altercation with Austin Metcalf. I find that very hard to believe. Austin Metcalf, he approaches Karmelo Anthony as a team captain because whatever the reasoning, he did it. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is just the icing on the cake. Austin Metcalf pushing Karmelo Anthony does not justify Karmelo Anthony doing the act that he did. Period. Simple as that. Case closed, and the only way the case can be open if the knife that was used was never in the personnel of Karmelo Anthony.
Come on, y'all. It's 2026. And what pisses me off, I expect certain things from certain communities, not from ours. And most of you motherfuckers sitting out here on some sellout shit.
What I expect from our community is for us not to make the same mistakes as we once did in the past. And right now, our community is taking a hit because it's exposing the ignorance that we can't hold our own accountable. And it's not just, everyday Joes that have the psyche, but celebrities and stars and people of high prestige are siding with Karmelo Anthony as if he's the victim. I'm like, yo, am I the only one that has logic? And a lot of people in the chat, y'all know what time it is. Y'all know clear as day what transpired. But also as well, there's individuals that are siding with Karmelo Anthony and giving him every excuse in the book. Ladies and gentlemen, in certain jobs, you can't even get a minute on a clock because you're going to get a write-up for being late. So if you get so much in trouble for being late at just a job, how come you get so much of a pass for taking a life away? I give my life away so you can use me. I give my life away. Crazy work. Gets all the excuses in the book. The accountability is nowhere to be found. Now, if evidence comes out that Karmelo Anthony is innocent, I will publicly apologize and say, you know what? I was wrong. But at the time being, what's being displayed for me to research, everything is concluding that he is guilty. One, a man is no longer breathing. Who took his life away? Karmelo Anthony? What weapon was used? A knife? Where was he at? School property? What else needs to be said? He was having seizures. He was outnumbered. The boys around him, they weighed 200 pounds. He was scared for his life. So being scared means he should pull out a knife and act like a character from a video game. Like, he pulled out a knife like he was playing zombies off of Call of Duty.
I'm sorry, and I'm trying to. I was at church yesterday, and this is real talk. This happened at my church. It was a guy who comes sometimes he just.
What's scary work is that people from church have this psyche, ladies and gentlemen. We have a pastor named Frederick Haynes, and he's bringing the politics of Karmelo Anthony in the church house of God, where he's supposed to be leading people to heaven, right? He's supposed to be breaking down the word of God and making the word of God more understanding, because it can be broken down in a language to where you can't understand. But instead, he wants to bring politics into the church.
Jury, I was there the last day when they gave closing arguments at the invitation of the family. And y'all, I sat in that courtroom disgusted because of the fact that the defense did not defend Karmelo Anthony. I sat there disgusted because the prosecuting attorney then had the nerve to paint Karmelo Anthony as a monster of a man. And then he closed out with this, and y'all reach your own conclusions. He told that jury of all non-blacks, he said, you have an opportunity here in Collin County County to determine the kind of community that you want to live in. As he pointed at that little boy who suffers from seizures, what do you think he was saying to that all non-black jury? And you're going to talk about you're going to talk about de-escalation. You're going to talk about telling our kids to calm down. No, you tell the kids to calm down. Who I went out to that Collin County courthouse and they came up to me. They said, "Thank you for being here, Pastor. But my question to you is, we can't defend ourselves because George Zimmerman can hunt down Trayvon Martin and he can get off for stand your ground. But this boy, our friend, can't even defend himself. We are not safe."
Do not spam in the chat. If you spam in the chat, you will get blocked. So I don't know why people do that in the first place. That's crazy work. But let's go back into the content. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why there was no black jurors was because they actually interviewed black jurors prior to the case, and they said they don't have the heart to convict one of their own. So after they made that statement, why would you still put them in the position to judge? That's another lie that has to be debunked. Why wasn't there any black jurors? Well, once again, they actually interviewed black people and they said, no, we don't have the heart to convict our own. So we got to stop the cap. We hear something and we just automatically think it's law and it's the truth. No, hear something and do research and fact check that. Fact check everything you hear. Don't just believe something and thinking it's law. Lies being spread at an all-time high all over social media talking about Karmelo Anthony is going to get free because he has a new lawyer team. Do you know the ratio of appeal ratio of actually getting appealed? People just hear something. Oh, Karmelo Anthony is coming home. Oh my God, Karmelo Anthony is coming home. Oh my God, Karmelo Anthony. Selective outrage. But how come there was no sympathy for that girl that got stabbed from the back from some crazy dude with dreadlocks on that train, and he had like 9 to 13 priors, but yet the judicial system failed that poor girl in that train because why is that man out in the first place? She got out from work. He's on the train. He, for no reason, stabbed her. I didn't see no videos about that. Matter of fact, the video I made about that situation, I had to take it down from YouTube because it was a little bit rated R. That man did the most. I didn't see all these black content creators make videos about that poor white girl getting stabbed from the back from that crazy ass dude. But because Karmelo Anthony is black, right? He gets all the support. And I'm not mad at the man getting support. If he's innocent, of course. Let's think of somebody that was black that actually deserved to get support. That was done injustice. Let me see. Let me think as of late. I could even say that is very controversial. George Floyd. George Floyd actually deserved justice. He didn't deserve to have a knee pressed down on his neck. And they say that the knee triggered the drugs that was in his system prior to him being arrested and killed. You know, he was a felon, this, that, and the third, counterfeit money, this, that, and the third. But a life shouldn't be disposed, period. That is injustice. Karmelo Anthony, that is wrong. Taking a life because you got pushed, my guy? Stop the cap. And that's what a lot of content creators and people are doing. They're mixing Karmelo Anthony with other racial cases just because of his skin color. It's disgusting.
There the first day when they selected jury. I was there the last day when they gave closing arguments at the invitation of the family. And y'all, I sat in that courtroom disgusted because of the fact that the defense did not defend Karmelo Anthony. I sat there disgusted because the prosecuting
Lady of Faith 93 says, taking a life is wrong no matter color you are. Absolutely, Lady of Faith. I don't care how much you hate somebody because they're white, black, whatever skin color they are, does not give justification to be happy that they're no longer here with us. That is demonic and satanic. And for people glorifying death, talking about your son is no longer here with us, those people are exposing themselves as demons. There's some things that you could say, and there's some things that should never be said. To be happy that some know that Austin Metcalf is dead is crazy work. Saying that he should have never. This is what people are saying in the chat room. Saying to the father of Austin Metcalf, saying that he should have never put his hands on him. He effed around and found out.
Attorney then had the nerve to paint Karmelo Anthony as a monster of a man, and then he closed out with this, and y'all reach your own conclusions. He told that jury of all non-blacks, he said, you have an opportunity here in Collin County to determine the kind of community that you want to live in. As he pointed at that little boy who suffers from seizures, what do you think he was saying to that?
Y'all see the gaslighting, ladies and gentlemen? What does Karmelo Anthony having seizures have to do with anything with him doing what he did to Austin Metcalf? So in the middle of him having a seizure, he was tweaking and spazzing out that he just had to grab a knife in the middle of a seizure and do what he did. Why mention Carmel? And that's what Carmel, not only this pastor that's talking, Frederick Hayes, capping behind the mic, not only is it him that's bringing up Karmelo Anthony suffers through seizures, but it's a multitude of content creators adding that to their content, saying that he had a medical condition. What's the medical condition? Is it schizophrenia? Maybe he can get some grace. No, it's seizure. What does the seizure have to do with doing what he did, bruh? The gaslighting is crazy work.
All non-black jury, and you're going to talk about you're going to talk about de-escalation, you're going to talk about telling our kids to calm down. No, you tell the kids to calm down. Who I went out to that Collin County courthouse, and they came up to me. They said, thank you for being here, Pastor. But my question to you is, we can't defend ourselves because George Zimmerman can hunt down Trayvon Martin, and he can get off for stand your ground. But this boy, our friend, can't even defend himself. We are not safe.
Do shit. I'm dancing. You ain't gonna 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 do shit.
The sad part about this is that the man that's dancing talking about I'm gangster, you ain't gonna do SHIT, is that by him exposing himself to the camera, he actually got arrested for priors. Second, you over here dancing for Karmelo Anthony, you got yourself arrested talking about I'm gangster, you ain't gonna do shit. The selective outrage is crazy.
If evidence does come out that Karmelo was not in fact fighting for his life when he stabbed and killed Austin Metcalf, do you think that the black community will accept that?
If evidence shows that he did not, no, we're going to stand by ours regardless. They stand by theirs. We're going to stand by ours regardless. I'm a mother first. I'm a black mother. Let me put that on there. I'm an African-American mother. So I have to put away my color first and step into the motherhood. Nobody wants to see their child slain. So I do.
This woman says if the evidence comes out that Karmelo Anthony is guilty, would you still support him? And she's talking about, yes, if the evidence comes out, I'm still going to support him. What? Man. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, through unfortunate situations, I'm thankful because if it wasn't for that situation, we wouldn't know how racist and how ignorant people really are. It really exposes them. That is what's inside of their psyche, their way of thinking. She was asked, if the evidence comes out, would you still support Carmela Anthony? And she says yes, because they stand by theirs. So completely disregarding the hard cold truth and the facts, but based off emotion, just because he's black, you're going to stand by him. Ah, yo, I mean, she took ride or died to a whole nother level, huh?
Gave it all for fantasy. Is anybody gonna remember me?
We want to send prayers to Austin Metcalf, their family. But at the end of the day, I got to think like, okay, what did you do to him or whatever to cause this to happen, the reaction? We got to start taking accountability for our kids. Because then again, if my kid, that's why it's a catch-22. If my kid was Karmelo and I feel like his back was up against the wall, well, I'm going to tell you straight up, better mine than yours. Better mine than yours. So either way it go, everybody loses. A black boy allegedly murdered, and I say allegedly, heavy on the allegedly,
That's another narrative lie that has to be debunked. Carmelo Anthony allegedly did not delete somebody. He actually did. And that's why Austin Metcalf is no longer here breathing. And that's why Carmelo Anthony is serving 30 plus years in jail, because he decides he wants to base his actions off emotion instead of logic. Then people in the chat talking about he has seizures. That's why he didn't allow Austin Metcalf to punch him, because he would be deceased if he allowed Austin Metcalf to punch him. That still does not give justification to use a knife. If you're so scared for your life that you have to have a knife on you, then we need to have a different conversation. There's nobody's fault but his for having that knife on his personnel. There's better ways to handle a bully than for you to always have a knife on your personnel. So he rather what, not be a snitch? Because he could have told authorities. He could have told multitude of people what's going on. If you're that fearful, ladies and gentlemen, I've been in some situations to where I was unfortunately had to defend myself, and I got in trouble in school. You know, I was a good kid. Parents working hard, the last thing they want to hear is that your kid got in trouble in school. But sometimes you're going to have to do what you have to do. You know how kids are. They're going to provoke, they're going to bully, and they're going to test you. They're going to try you, especially if they see you have a future. They're going to try you. Does that mean that I need to delete the opposition, the ops, because of a disagreement, because I'm feeling some type of way? I'm so much of a coward, I have to use a knife to defend myself. You would have got more respect if you ran away. You don't get no respect for using no knife. This isn't Ninja Turtles. You ain't no Donatello, Michelangelo, Leonardo. This man is pulling out a weapon like it's a weapon from Grand Theft Auto, weapon of your choice. This man thought it was Grand Theft Auto in real life. But now he has 30 plus years to reminisce of his decision in TDC federal prison. And we should take heed of this, ladies and gentlemen, to not base our actions off emotion. Sometimes easier said than done, but some things should never happen. You may speed, keep your foot a little bit heavy on the gas pedal. You know what I'm saying? Some things, it is what it is. But some things, once again, should never happen.
Murdered somebody. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, this is about race. Because if the shoe was on the other foot, they wouldn't give a damn.
Who wouldn't give a damn?
Let me say this. Let's say the community.
So like if Carmelo Anthony was the one stabbed and killed by Austin Metcalf,
they wouldn't give a damn.
Once again, this is my second time addressing this. If you're spamming in the chat, you're out of here. Do not be spamming in the chat. That is not cool. I don't know where or who raised you. Why do you think that's okay? I see the first message. If you really want your message to be seen, you can send a super chat, and I will read your message, and your voice can be heard. But to be spamming in the chat, it's some crazy work. Imagine spamming in the chat. Trying to do what? Stop the cap. Automatically blocked immediately.
I'm out here every Thursday, and we pray for people going to court because we know this is the final frontier of racism, and it's legalized here.
It was announced yesterday that there's no black jurors that were chosen. What are your thoughts on that?
That's why we need God. That's why we need God, and that's why he's going to show who's in control.
And would you be open to giving us your personal insights into the Karmelo Anthony trial and what your thoughts are on it?
I just want justice done. We know nobody go to a track meet to murder anybody, okay? Come on. That's an accident, self-defense, that's what it was. I'm not saying the kid should get off free, but first-degree murder? Come on. Basically, he's facing the wrong charge for the crime that was committed.
Do you think Karmelo is innocent? Do you feel like it's been an unfair response to what happened to Karmelo Anthony?
I feel that the justice system always over-respond when it comes to us. So, definitely, I mean, you look at the charge. It was self-defense. He was.
People are so delusional talking about it was self-defense. Just says what wasn't a knife? The weapon of choice. The narrative prior to the evidence being displayed was that the knife was a cleat sharpener. They was calling a pocket knife a cleat sharpener, trying to downplay it, saying that he was taking shop in high school and it's legal to carry it in your personnel. That was the narrative. That's what the lies that was being told. The reason why it was legal was because he was in high school. And in high school, there's a class called shop where you build things and do stuff that requires a pocket knife, a wrench, etc. So he had it in his personnel. That's why he had it, and it's legal. First of all, even if you did have a cleat sharpener or whatever sharp object, it still doesn't give justification to use it as self-defense in high school grounds. Crazy work, the people that be lying on Karmelo Anthony's behalf. All because of what reason, though?
He was wrestling with two guys. I don't know what the parameters of it, but it was two people. So, 2 against 1, that's...
He was fighting against multiple entities that was lighter complexion and probably was getting bullied prior. Still doesn't justify him stabbing somebody in the heart.
Self-defense.
I'm dancing, you ain't gonna do shit. 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 I'm dancing, you ain't gonna do shit.
I don't have an opinion. I don't.
The outrage is crazy. When Karmelo Anthony is living, but they treating the man like he's the victim. Exhibit A. Yo, you see this? When you open the door at the gas station, don't say nothing. Just go to your vehicle and leave.
I have an opinion here.
Just like Karmelo was doing. I'm glad you just said that. That's what Karmelo was doing. Protecting his motherfucking self.
Free Carmelo. You guys support Carmelo? Yes? Yes? We're just here with press just to record and talk to you guys and see what's going on. Okay. Okay. It's a free country. You're in public. You're in public. Okay. Okay. Well, you're in public. I'm just asking. Yeah. Bitch, go! Whoa.
Hey, move the camera, bro. They don't want to.
It's free speech. It's free speech. Why are you throwing stuff at us? Yeah, why are you throwing stuff at us? What the hell is that? All right, well, they're throwing water bottles at us while we're recording.
By the way, there's signs right here that says self-defense is not a crime. Karmelo Anthony should do no time. And there's also this sign right here says hands off. And this sign says we stand with you. I believe it's about Karmelo as well. And you'll see a picture right here of Karmelo Anthony. These are pictures probably from his Instagram. Self-defense is not a crime. So that's basically with the tensions being high here. You can see, I mean, we're not here to support anybody, but we're already having things thrown at us. Well, we don't have to do that.
Angry and upset. His family members over there.
Okay.
So you're agitated.
Oh, they're family members.
You're agitated.
Okay, cool. We'll come back. Yeah, you're good. All right. Well, we don't have to go, but
a little bit too soon, but you know, I'm all for a good laugh. I saw something that was pretty comical in the chat. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, I can't find the comment, but someone said, you see how he didn't stab nobody in the tent when he was told to leave. Oh, that's hilarious. So, in reference to that joke, for the ones that don't understand, Karmelo Anthony was told to leave by Austin Metcalf, and he decided to stay. The gentleman that was being played the video, he was told to leave by the Karmelo Anthony supporters, and he didn't stab nobody. Like, there is no justification to pull out a knife. Karmelo Anthony, if you're so scared of a punch, then run away. There's been plenty of times of kids that have everything to lose. They know they can fight back, but they're like, you know what? There's a time and place for everything. You're fighting on school grounds. Run, bro. If you really care about your future, what point? What are you trying to prove? You don't even get to prove that because now your ass is in TDC prison, federal prison.
basically what you see here, the same problem you're going to see completely every single time is that people who support Karmelo kind of know he's guilty and he's going to go to prison. I would be kind of upset.
I'm dancing, you ain't gonna do shit. 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 I'm dancing, you ain't gonna do shit.
Us from being able to have a legal right to see what the on in this case for a month reason. That's right. Because he know when we have access, we don't play about our people. So how do he silence us? He closed the case so we can't see what is going on. Also, the reason he shut down black media from coming, he only had these white in their courthouse so that they could tell the wrong story about Karmelo Anthony. And they could tell the white story about the domestic terror, because that's what they were. Those twins are domestic racist terrorists. That judge, him. That prosecutor, him. They had them white on their jury for a reason. He gonna get it back in the eye. When they pick their jury like that, that's designed because they know that their people are not smart as us. We can read through the book. They follow their book and believe what they say. So when we are out here discrediting ourselves, it's giving them an advantage. They know how to divide us, and that's through the court system. And they silence us from the court system. When you see that prosecutor, ask him, why do he have a settlement with a civil case for harassing 7 white women at the... Ask the DA how he was on that. He still got a job. That's because they vote for each other. So we got to take our power back. Elections are coming. That's right. That's right. We gonna tell they ask what we want. Are you? We got to show up for jury service. We got to show up and participate. Stop trying, because that's how they slaughter us. Those kids got up there and lied off of a relationship. And the prosecutors led it. They have an ethical duty to make sure witnesses testify truthfully. And
sings, he's a great singer, wheelchair. Goes on his caretaker. A lot of us was happy to see him because we ain't seen him in a while. And when it got quiet, he just yelled, they're killing our kids. They're killing our kids. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And, you know, yelling out in the middle of service, and they escorted him out. But I remember sitting there like, yeah, the timing was a little whatever, but he ain't wrong. He ain't wrong. So I'm sorry to be this upset, but I'm gonna tell y'all, so I be trying not to read these fucking comments, and I try to block as many people as I can, but that shit is upsetting that you think that young.
Absolutely not smart enough to leave. So this man, Karmelo Anthony, was a straight A student, phenomenal athlete, right? But he doesn't have the street smarts to run away because of his ego. For whatever reason, he didn't leave. If you have everything to lose, your career, going to disappoint your family members, you're outnumbered, you're growing up in a white neighborhood, you should probably be used to running. You probably be used to running away. You have to understand the politics of your surroundings. If you're outnumbered and you know what time it is, you have seizures, you can't be touched. If, ladies and gentlemen, if I have seizures, I'm not even in that situation. You huffing and puffing in my direction, I'm gone. You doing anything out of character, I'm out of there because my life is on the line. They're talking about he can't be punched because he has seizures. That's why he pulled out the pocket knife. Well, if it's that serious and the confrontation is being involved, I'm ghost. I want to be nowhere close to confrontation. Why was he provoking the situation, talking about put your hands on me again, see what happens? Was that the best thing to say at that time? He could have smirked, you know what I mean? Give that smirk, nod his head, be like, okay, bet. You got it. You got it. And move around. His life would still be out of prison. Austin Metcalf would still be alive. He could have acted accordingly, but instead he bases bases actions off of emotions.
Man deserved 35 years. You think he deserved to people to take the stand and change their stories? He deserved only a couple hour deliberation to determine what happens for the rest of his life. The fuck is wrong with y'all? We're asking for a fair trial. And calling that young man a murderer? He didn't walk into that fucking track meet and just start stabbing people. Not like that young man who walked with that fucking rifle to a protest.
It's not the same situation. Goalpost move. Goalpost move. And ladies and gentlemen, they're running YouTube, making content, goalpost, gaslighting. Whatever you hear, please research it. Don't just believe it off the first listen, and fact check whatever you consume, because there's a lot of cap that's going on. Crazy work. I'm gonna go to the polls. We got 1,000. We got 1,200 votes in the building. 85% says Karmelo Anthony does not have the right to use a knife on school property, and 15% says Karmelo Anthony does have the legal right to use a knife on school property. What? I be trying to laugh with the bros. 15% believes that Karmelo Anthony has the right to use a knife on school property. What is wrong with y'all, bruh? I be trying to laugh with the bros. Someone says, I hope he doesn't drop the soap in prison. I be trying to laugh with the bros. Man, at this point, should he even take a bath? Just don't take a bath, man. Just don't go to sleep. Don't take a bath. Don't brush your teeth. Just stay idle. Stay stationary in there. I be trying to laugh with the bros. This man getting sympathy when he's the one that brought a knife to school. Nobody told him to bring a knife. Only thing that you should bring is a pencil. Like, if he was to do the same act but with a pencil, people would be like, you know what? I mean, you're allowed to bring a pencil. You know what I mean? Crazy work. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my time. I'm out of here. Let me know your take for the ones that's watching in playback in the comment section. What I take from this case is that don't base your decision off emotion. If you're feeling some type of way, take a breather, take a walk. can't throw our life away being locked up in jail because of a dispute. Crazy work. Make sure you consider subscribing to this platform, like the video, and hit the bell notification so you will be notified when I do go live. I'm out of here.
The last day when they gave closing arguments at the invitation of the family. And y'all, I sat in that courtroom disgusted because of the fact that the defense did not defend Karmelo Anthony. I sat there disgusted because the prosecuting attorney then had the nerve to paint Karmelo Anthony as a monster of a man. And then he closed out with this, and y'all reach your own conclusions. He told that jury of all non-blacks, he said, you have an opportunity here in Collin County to determine the kind of community that you want to live in. As he pointed at that little boy who suffers from seizures, what do you think he was saying to that all non-black jury? And you're going to talk about you're going to talk about de-escalation, you're going to talk about telling our kids to calm down. No, you tell the kids to calm down. Who I went out to that Collin County courthouse and they came up to me, they said, thank you for being here, Pastor, but my question to you is, we can't defend ourselves because George Zimmerman can hunt down Trayvon Martin and he can get off for stand your ground. But this boy,
I don't give a shit about the skin color, okay? You don't gotta remind me that I'm black. I know I'm black. I'm not freaking blonde. I look in the mirror every single day. I know that I'm black. But that don't mean a damn thing when it comes to this situation right here. Color don't have anything to do with it. It has everything to do with somebody killing somebody that they had no business killing. It was not self-defense. He murdered that young boy. And y'all think it's okay because he's white? And you don't want to, and you want to threaten me? And you want to call me out? I don't want to be around anybody. I don't want to be associated with anybody who thinks it is okay for a young man, a young teenager, to be murdered all because he's white. If you think that's okay, I don't want you in my life. I don't want to be anywhere near you. I don't want you following me, and I'm not going to follow you, okay? Y'all are freaking evil and full of hatred and straight up racist. To all you black people that accuse white people of being racist, but y'all stand with Karmelo Anthony and y'all think it's okay that he killed an innocent white boy, y'all are freaking racist. Y'all are the real racist ones. Because these white people that are standing up, that have been asking for justice for Austin, it's not because of his race. It's because he did not deserve to be stabbed at school. That's why. It has nothing to do with race. So if you got a problem with me being black and not standing with some damn killer, a criminal who decided to stab an innocent person, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I don't care. Keep threatening me. You can say that I'm not black anymore. Say what you want. I don't give a damn. Because this is about right and wrong. And y'all are straight up wrong for standing with Karmelo Anthony, knowing he had no business bringing a knife to school, knowing he had no business stabbing that boy. When kids fight at school all the time. A lot of y'all kids fight at school. Do you want them to get stabbed? And according to witness.
Man, what a great point. Karmelo Anthony fighting Austin Metcalf is not the first fight. It won't be the last. We acting like kids don't fight at school. Kids are going to be kids. Boys are going to be boys. You don't hear a case of a boy pulling out a knife in the middle of a fight. He's not in the back alley of New York City.
This is Karmelo Anthony started it. But let's say that Austin did. He still did not deserve to be stabbed and killed at school. Period. Point blank, period. At the end of the day, This is about the human race, not black and white and brown, purple, or any of that. We are all humans. And another human wrongfully killed another human. Get that through your freaking head.
I'm dancing, you ain't gonna do shit. 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 I'm dancing, you ain't gonna do shit.
See, I could. Because it was a win for them. They cost one of ours their freedom. That judge was in there feeding the state objections because they were too dumb to know what to object to.
Yes, he did.
I ain't never seen no judge do no shit like that.
He did.
He got too much experience, over 40 years at the and you don't know that, and you got this judge up there helping you on such a big case. This is his life. We just came from South Carolina where they hunted their baby down and got off. They tried to hunt him down and he
Once again, the other cases has nothing to do with Karmelo Anthony. It's not that. Now, was the courtroom wrong? The judge wrong for denying the black media to bring their cell phones and notes? They couldn't take notes. They couldn't record. That's weird. That is absolutely taboo and should be addressed. That doesn't even make any sense. That is wrong. But what is also wrong is Karmelo Anthony having a knife on his personnel and using it. So the selective outrage is crazy.
I be trying to laugh with the bros. Protected himself so he could get home safe, and they convicted him. And one white jury had the mother to sit in that damn box and cry. It's too late for your tears. Your tears was needed when you was back there deciding within 30 fucking minutes of his life.
Come on, man. What's wrong with you people?
The Karmelo Anthony case, he was convicted of murdering his fellow teenager, Austin Metcalf. This is the kid. They were at a track meet, a high school track meet in Texas. It was raining. Karmelo Anthony, black kid, used the tent from another high school. Austin Metcalf asked him to leave. Karmelo Anthony, there was some kind of scuffle we don't know that much about, but Karmelo Anthony took out a knife and stabbed him to death. He murdered a 17-year-old over an argument. And Austin Metcalf was white. Karmelo Anthony, the killer, was black. He was convicted after the jury deliberated for 3 hours, sentenced to 35 years in prison. But people, especially black people, saw the color of Anthony's skin and supported him with over something like $600,000 in donations for his defense. And after he was sentenced, a congresswoman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett, made this remark.
35 years for a kid who had decided to go under a tent that was not his team's tent as it was raining and simply didn't want to be put out in the rain by some random kid that he didn't know who was larger than him. Listen, a lot of people don't.
Y'all see the excuses they make? The bullies was larger than him. It was raining outside. That's why he didn't leave the tent. All the excuses. When you look at the footage, it wasn't even raining like that. Everything they saying to defend Karmelo Anthony, if you actually go and find the truth for yourself, it's not what they say. They're talking about the knife that was used was a cleat sharpener. Meanwhile, it was a whole pocket knife. It wasn't no damn cleat sharpener. They're talking about it was raining so hard. That's why Karmelo Anthony had to stay underneath the tent. That's cap. It was barely even drizzling outside. People didn't even have umbrellas. They're talking about the man had seizures. That's why he didn't want to be touched. Well, if that's the case, then a different conversation needs to be said, needs to be held. Karmelo Anthony parents failed him to not put in his brain that when you face confrontation, you run. Especially you, if you're suffering from seizures, you of all people should be away from confrontation. If you're so scared for your life, there's a lot of things that could have kept Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony away from the federal state prison, and Austin Metcalf still could have been breathing if it wasn't for the emotions of Karmelo Anthony. Bringing a knife to school, talking about he has seizures. What? all this sympathy for a grown-ass man.
I don't know what it is to live as a black person in this country, but Just like you can give the benefit of the doubt to so many police officers when they go out and they shoot some black unarmed person, even though they are trained. The fact that there was little to no mercy seen or humanity seen when this black boy said that I was scared.
Oh, well, if he was scared, that's all right then.
Karmelo Anthony was scared, so he pulled out a knife. What kind of shit is that?
I mean, look, you know, that's 35 years.
Yo, I barely see people talking about Karmelo Anthony being wrong. It's mostly videos circulating saying that he is the victim. And I'm looking at the same things that's available for the public to see, and yet I'm just confused how people are siding with Karmelo Anthony. It's not about race, it's about what is right. And what is right is that a knife should have never been involved on school property.
I think it was pretty lenient, frankly, what I would have given him. But still, that woman is in government. That woman is in government. So you know she's not doing anything about black crime if she's going to defend a murderer. A murderer, she's defending a murderer for no reason except for the color of his skin.
Austin fell onto Karmelo's knife trying to attack him because the knife is 3.5 inches. The cut was only 2. Loon, if I'm stabbing you, why am I going halfway with a knife blade that's only 3.5 inches? You fell onto my knife.
I heard no evidence of Karmelo Anthony or Austin Metcalf falling into a knife. I heard no evidence of that whatsoever. And there were 21 people, who was considered for the jury. You know, you had your grand jury testimony and all of this other stuff going on. And there was 21 people that were talked to. There were witnesses that were in attendance. Nobody talked about Austin Metcalf falling into a knife. I don't know where that comes from. And obviously because of how severe the penalty was, 35 years in prison, we're going to take into account history from an historical perspective, from a racist perspective, and we're not going to be uncomfortable with the discrepancy that exists between somebody like Casey Allison compared to a Karmelo Anthony. I got that part. But that doesn't give us a license to then turn around and to just come up with stuff that might have been, as opposed to listening to the evidence that was actually disseminated and making reaching a conclusion based off of that. Karmelo Anthony was quoted as saying to Austin Metcalf, "Put your hands on me and find out what's going to happen."
Now, with all of this evidence released to the public, are any of these supporters beginning to understand why Anthony was found guilty? Are they sorry for their incendiary rhetoric? Are they sorry for Hunter Metcalf and causing him more harassment and harm by starting a change.org petition to have him arrested for assault, even though there's zero evidence he laid hands on Karmelo Anthony? They want the brother arrested. There are literally people out there saying that they should dig up Austin Metcalf and piss on his grave and on him. Are they sorry? No, certainly haven't expressed one word of that. One well-known Karmelo Anthony supporter, Tiffany Billions,
when they gave closing arguments at the invitation of the family. And y'all, I sat in that courtroom disgusted because of the fact that the defense did not defend Karmelo Anthony. I sat there disgusted because the prosecuting attorney then had the nerve to paint Karmelo Anthony as a monster of a man. And then he closed out with this, and y'all reach your own conclusions. He told that jury of all non-blacks, he said, you have an opportunity here in Collin County to determine the kind of...
The horror of losing your child is unfathomable. But my question is this. In Texas, it has the highest concentration of black people, the biggest population of black people in the entire country. You had an all-white jury. You don't understand how problematic that is, because let's be clear, white juries haven't been the most judicious. They have let off a lot of people, white murderers, and they have convicted a lot of innocent black dudes. So let's not pretend like there's not a dubious reputation. You can't find any black people for the jury, but you miraculously can find black dudes on the football field or the baseball field or the basketball court. As I recall, the southern region has the most concentration of the highest concentration, the largest population of black people in the country. Black people, by and large, have 60% of black people live in the South. And more particular, the state of Texas has more black people than anywhere in the country. You do not have a problem finding black people to play games, but you somehow manage to have a problem with sitting them on the jury. You will never ever see in this country, and I'd be willing to bet there's never been a situation where a white guy killed a black guy, and that white guy was charged by a black prosecutor, tried by a black judge, and had a all black jury give down the sentence. There's never going to be a reverse To Kill a Mockingbird, a reverse 12 Angry Men. And let me tell you something. Nobody's more angry than 12 black people who are not getting paid. They missing work to be at court. Even at that, why do you know how much of this could be avoided if white people just didn't walk up to black people and ask what they were doing there? I don't care if it's Trayvon.
That's another gaslight. Another gaslight. We can't not do that. D.L. Hoogley, respectfully, I understand you're a comedian, very talented in the Kings of Comedy, one of the greats. And we understand he's very political now, but we can't justify bringing a knife on school property. Like, that's the common denominator. Everything was go to rest if the knife was never involved, but it's being blown because the life is not here. And if it's one of your own, you will feel some type of way. You don't send your kid to school not hearing from your kid again. Like, that's some crazy ass work. But that's my time, ladies and gentlemen. We're at the 2 hour mark. Y'all stay blessed, stay safe, and stay away from hating ass entities that glorify death. Crazy work.